Good morning. Good morning. Hope everybody's doing great. Everybody's all right. We'll give a few seconds for everybody, see if anybody else will join us, and then we'll go ahead and get started. So let's go ahead and get rolling. Hope everybody's doing great and everybody's doing all right. Just a reminder as to where we are, in lecture and in our notes. We covered for B.1 through B.4, C1 and C2. And so for that group of content, and this should be reflected in WebAssign, for that group of content, that's what's going to be due come September 22nd. Should be a Sunday. That's your fifth week. That's what I'm going to look for your fifth week grading. So that means midnight that night, so 11:59, and then rolling into 5:23. That's when it hits 12 o'clock. That's when everything will be cut off. I'll put in grades, and then once I get grades in, I'll open everything back up. So we just, I had to put a marker there to let you know this is where you are expected to be at this moment. So I can give a report, basically a progress report as to where you are at that time. So whatever you want your grade to say will be based upon those 6 sections. So those 6 sections, homeworks, whatever quizzes that are involved, and test 1. Test 1 is based on B1 through B4 and C1 and C2. All right. So what we do today will not be on that first test, and you'll not be held responsible for it for your 5th week grading. Of course, you're going to be held responsible for it at some point, but just not for your 5th week grading. So 9/22 is our marker. All right. So make sure you try this stuff out. See if you have any questions. We have a week. I think we have a week, this next week coming up. Yep. And then that's when things will be due. So, yep. So today we have the next homework assignment is 5-1-5-2-5-3. And so notice the title I put up here, more on intercepts and slopes. So the good thing about this homework assignment is that majority of it is something we've already talked about, which are your intercepts and slopes. Like the first 8 problems, they asked you, about finding your intercepts, calculating slopes. So we already know how to do that. We already know the formulas. We already know I want to find my y-intercept. I let x be equal to 0. I want to find my x-intercept. I let y be equal to 0. So, try those out, see if you have any more questions about them. But the last 2 or 3 problems on the homework assignment has word problems that are associated with intercepts and slopes. So we're gonna do 3 problems today, dealing with that type of concept. How do we translate slopes and intercepts to word problems? And then, I'll let you go. But that's the only thing that's different in that homework assignment. 5-1, 5-2, 5-3. That's how it's labeled. Remember I told you the department head created these homework assignments. And so how it's labeled is section 1, 2, 5-1, 5-2, 5-3. So it encapsulates that. And like I said, majority of it just intercepts and slopes. So looking at this problem right here, let's see if I can make it a little bigger. It says marketing surveys conducted by the sales manager for a company determined that 2,000 power drills could be sold for $50 each, but 3,000 drills could be sold for $40 each. It says if the 2 data points were plotted on a coordinate system with the number of drills sold on the horizontal axis and the price each drill on the price of each drill on the vertical axis, if I can get it out, what is the slope of the line between the 2 points? B is write a sentence that explains the result in part A in context of the problem. And then C, assuming that the trend in part A continues, how many drills can be sold for $38? All right, so I think I want to change this. Let me be writing this down, something chance. So they tell us how to set up our ordered pair, and which part is going to be X or which part is going to be Y, which part is going to be the first component of our ordered pair, which part is going to be the second component of our ordered pair. So remember, this leans back on what we're talking about with the domain versus the range. So notice here, the number of drills sold is on the horizontal axis. That means that's going to be X. And then the price of each drill is the vertical axis, which means that's going to be Y. So that's what I did right here. The number of drill is your X value. The price of the drill is going to be your Y. All right, and they gave that to us. And then from there, they gave us some information that will help us set up the 2 points or the two order pairs. They say that 2,000 power drills could be sold for $50. So the number of drills is 2,000, and how much they cost each is 50. So that's why my first order pair is 2,050. And then it says 3,000 drills can be sold for $40. That's why my next order pair is 3,040. Questions on this part right here? This part is given. Now that you have your two ordered pairs, the question for A is, what is the slope of the line between the 2 points? You know, here's our slope formula. Y2 minus Y1 equal to X2 minus X1. So you plug your values in accordingly. Y2 for us is 40. Y1 is 50, so it's 40 minus 50 over X2, which is 3,000, minus X1, which is 2,000. So if you do the work, that's negative 10 over 1,000, which is negative 0.01. Then notice right here in these word problems, you still have your units that were involved. So we know we had dollars up top, because that, you know, $40 and $50. And then down bottom, we have the number of drills. So that's just dollars per drill or dollar over drill. That's going to be considered your rate. So web assign, you know, will probably have the rate still involved because it's a word problem. So whatever the unit is on top, that stays on top. Whatever the unit is on bottom, stays on bottom. So this is negative 1 cent per drill. Questions on what we did for A? Make sure we are okay. All right. So let's look at B says write a sentence that explains part A. And so this says, and once again, we're dealing with dollars and cents. So that 0.01 is 1 cent. It says for each 1 cent decrease. Now it's a negative. It's negative. So that means it's a decrease. Now, if it was positive, it would be increase. So for each 1 cent decrease in price, one additional drill can be sold. What? Can I scroll up? So now C asks us, assume the trend continues, how many drills can be sold for $38? So in order for us to do that, we need to introduce another formula. Remember last class, we had the slope intercept formula. Here, we're going to introduce the point slope formula. And that's right here in the green box. y minus y1 equal to m times x minus x1. Where we just found m was negative 0.01. And you can just, it doesn't matter which point we use, but we already called one of those points x1, y1, so we might as well stay with that. So that 2,000 and that 50 that we had right here, we'll just use that one. And we're gonna plug in for y1, m, and x1. And that's what we did right here. Substituted m, x1, and y1 into the equation. So we have y minus 50 equal to negative 0.01 times x minus 2,000. All right, everybody okay? So now that you have your values plugged into the equation or the formula properly, you can go ahead and solve and distribute first. So negative 0.01 times x is negative 0.01x. Negative 0.01 times negative 2,000 is positive 20. Add 50 to both sides. So that it cancels out on the left, leaving you just y. 50 plus 20 on the right is 70. So you see we have this equation of y equal negative 0.01x plus 70. And so we needed an equation that would help in being able to project or predict what it would be or how many drills would be able to be sold at $38 a piece. All right, everybody okay? Any questions up to this point? You're not finished, but that's just where we had to go first. So now we're going to take that $38 that they asked us about and plug it into the equation. And so here I'm just reminding you that X should be drills, should be the number of drills. I'm going to change that. X is the number of drills. Y is the price of the drills. So if they gave us the price at $38, so I need to plug that in where Y is. And Y is right here, so I plug that in right here. At 38 right here. So yeah, 38 equal to negative 0.01x plus 70. And from there, we need to solve for x. By holding on to the green, and you go to next to copy. All right, so add, we subtract 70 from both sides. Remember, the goal now is to get x by itself. So we're going to subtract 70 from both sides. That's negative 32 equal to negative 0.01x. And then we need to divide both sides by negative 0.01. And that'll give us 3,200. All right. Questions, any questions? Everybody good? We'll go to the next one. All right. All right, next one. It says director of a basketball camp estimates that the number N of students who will enroll in a basketball camp can be modeled by N equal to negative 0.3 T plus 270, where T is the tuition for the camp in dollars. What is the N-intercept? Write a sentence that explains the answer in part A in the context. What is the T-intercept? And then write a sentence that explains the answer in part C in the context. So somebody might be trying to copy that, so I'll give you a chance to do so. All right, so notice the first question is, what is the N-intercept? So the way that the problem is set up, our input value is going to be T. In other words, it's going to be our X. Our output is going to be N, which is like our Y. So, remember we talked about our domain and range before and how they can relate. Remember, I told you the letters may change, but we have a list of things like, horizontal versus vertical, input versus output. What was the other ones? First component versus second component. It will dictate this is my domain versus my range. This is my first value in my order pair. This is my second value of the order pair. So different characteristics that each one of them have. And so that's what we had going on here. That T is carrying on the characteristics of the first component. Our domain and N is our second. Also, make sure you hold true to the capital and lowercase that you see. If they give you a capital N, then you have to use capital N in your answer if it's involved. And then same thing with lowercase t. We need to use lowercase t. All right. So we need to find the N-intercept. If I'm going to find the N-intercept, then I need to let the other variable be equal to 0, which is t. So that's what we did here. And remember, don't forget what T and N represent. T is tuition, and N is the number of students that will enroll into the camp. So that's going to be key when we look at B. So plugging in 0 for T, that's negative 0.3 times 0, which is 0. And then 0 plus 270 is just 270. So my ordered pair here is 0, 270. So the sentence that explains this ordered pair, it says if this tuition was $0, then you would expect 270 students to enroll. Any problem with A and B? All right, C tells us to find the T-intercept, so we start off by letting N be equal to 0. And don't forget N was over here to the left, so that's 0 equal to negative 0.3 T plus 270. So it means this time we have to solve for T. And we do so by subtracting 270 from both sides first, then divide by negative 0.3, and that'll give us 900 for T. All right. So T is 900. That means, and don't forget N was 0. So 900, 0 is the ordered pair. And a sentence that describes that ordered pair says if the tuition were to cost $900, no students would enroll. That's what we expect to happen from that equation. All right, questions, any questions before we do at least one more? Well, we only have one more. Five lectures like the same, the notes like the same, so we got one more. All right. So we have a red maple sapling, was 3 feet tall when planted in 2010. 6 years later, the tree was 24 feet tall. The growth rate of the tree is constant over time. Find a linear model for the growth of the red maple in years after 2010. What is expected height? What is the expected height of the red maple in 2020? It says let N equal to 0 represent 2010. All right. So the given information, we know that in 2010, the sapling was 3 feet tall. 6 years later, so that means 2016, it was 24 feet. They also tell us that N equal to 0 is going to represent 2010. And so N, and then also N represent the years after 2010. And then it says, what is the expected height? So that means Y, what is normally Y for us would be H. Whether they want you to use capital H or lowercase h or whatever letters they want you to use, they will make it clear in web assignments. So when I was looking at different this example, they use capital H, so I'm going to read it with capital H, but they should make it clear because they are going to be expecting certain letters, and whatever letters they give you or tell you to use, they're going to expect you to use those, or they probably will mark it wrong. So if you use X and Y, but they told you to use N and H, they will mark it wrong. So make sure you're using the letters that they gave you. All right. So let's look at the order pairs that they gave us. The initial one is 3 feet in 2010, but in 2010, N is equal to 0. So that means our ordered pair will be 0, 3. Don't forget the years go first, then your height. So 0, 3. And then in 2016, how many years past 2010 is that? It says 6 years. So that means N would be 6, and then it's 24 feet in 2016. So that's 624. So that's how we got those order pairs. All right, everybody good? So scrolling up, they asked, first thing we're gonna need, so what they asked for us is to find a linear model. That means an equation that represents what's going on in this problem. So the first thing we need to do is to find the slope. We have our two ordered pairs. So we plug them in accordingly, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Remember, y2 and y1 are the second components. That's what I was trying to get us to see here, the relationship between these letters. And then x and x1 and x2 are your first components of your order pairs. So y2 would be 24, y1 would be 3. Like I said, those are our h's in this case, but you know, the formula gives you y. So like I said, I'm trying to get us to see the relationship between these different letters. And then down bottom, there's going to be 6 minus 0 for x2 minus x1. Doing the subtraction, that'll be 21 over 6, which is 3.5. So that is our slope, 3.5. All right, so now that we have a slope and we have our points, we can use either one of these points. Just like I said before, I just go ahead and use the one I've already called x1, y1, but you could have used a 624 if you wanted to, because they both points on the same line, so they'll still give you the same equation if you do everything correctly. So our slope is 3.5, x1, y1 is 0, 3. So we're going to plug in for y1 in the x1. So y1 is 3, m is 3.5, and then x1 is 0. Of course, 0 is just that. So you left with x in the parentheses, is 3.5 times x. Add 3 to both sides. That's y equal to 3.5x plus 3. And don't forget, the letters that we're using for this application is H for y and then N for x. So that's what you go ahead and put those in accordingly. H is equal to 3.5, N plus 3. All right. So we got that part. We have our model. That's our equation right there. H equal to 3.5 N plus 3. Go back to the equation, not equation, the problem that asked us, what is the expected height of the red maple in 2010? So now we're going to take that equation, and remember, N represents how many years past 2010. I said 2010. The problem asked for 2020. I didn't mean to say 2010. The problem asked for how tall do you expect it to be in 2020. So 2010 is where we start, and N represents how many years past 2010. So if we look at 2020, that means N is going to be equal to 10 because it's 10 years past 2010. If I can get my numbers right. So yeah, you want to know how tall will it be in 2020? That's 10 years after 2010. So that's why N is equal to 10. And then so you plug 10 into your equation for N. So that's 3.5 times 10 plus 3. 3.5 times 10 is 35 plus 3 is 38. So we expect the tree to be 38 feet tall in by 2020. All right, questions, any questions? All right, so yep, that's it. So those are the three problems, three word problems I want to show you that if you were to, mimic the process, look at the steps, you should be able to apply it to the couple of problems that you have in your homeworks. In this homework assignment. Are there any questions before we close out today? Any questions? Any questions? You know, good. Everybody straight. All right. So you guys know what you have to do. Like I said before, B1 through B4, C1, C2, and those quizzes, and then also that test one. Remember, test review is not mandatory, but I would suggest that you at least take a look at it and see what type of problems will be on it. But if you score 85 or better on the test review, you can get extra credit, 5 points extra credit added to your test. And once again, this is not a part of fifth week grading, but it will be a part of, 10th week. So, and then all of that is reflected in WebAssign. So if you guys are good, I'm good. Have a great weekend, be safe, and next class, we'll just continue on. All right, you guys take care.